Welcome to another episode of the Victory Podcast, driven by Audi. I'm your host, Keely Eure, joined by my co-host and former USC quarterback, Cody Kessler. Cody, we normally do this setup on a Sunday, but it's actually Wednesday morning, and that's because we decided to shift this episode. It is a bye week. Normally, we kind of take a little bit of a break during a bye week, but it's my fault, I chose to take the break Sunday because we got back from Notre Dame at 4:30 in the morning, and I was not feeling the best, and I was like, you know what? We have over-under as to how many times I'm going to get sick this season. Got to keep that number low. Threw all the haters wrong. But no, I decided to just shift this episode to Wednesday because why not have a bigger overview of what we're looking at, not only just the Notre Dame loss, but what do the next 5 games look like for USC and what can we expect? So Cody, this is kind of a mishmash of an episode, kind of a Sunday, Wednesday episode together.
Yeah, that's exactly what this episode's going to be. I promise we're not avoiding doing the recap episode on Notre Dame. We're going to talk about what went wrong for USC in that game. We're also going to talk about some of the positives and things they can build off of going forward. We're going to look at offense, defense, and even special teams that came up and hurt USC in this game. But the second half of this episode, we're going to talk about what needs to happen going forward and how USC needs to dominate these next 5 games if they want a chance to compete not only in the Big Ten, but still have a chance to compete in the college football playoffs. And I know it's tough to talk about that or think about the playoffs after a loss. And I know it's a cliche saying that this team still has everything they want to accomplish ahead of them, but it is true. And you can see it around college football right now. Some of these top-ranked teams are losing. Teams within conference are beating each other. There's still a big opportunity for this USC football team. They had that good win against Michigan. They played well early in the season. They're only 5-2. That they have won some tough games. They have been playing some good football. So there is an opportunity for this team to still accomplish all their goals, but there are things that need to get corrected on both sides of the football if they want to be able to compete in December and ultimately compete for a college football playoff.
Alrighty, Cody, let's head into the meat and potatoes. Before we do, just a couple reminders. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can also watch the video version of this show on the USC Athletics YouTube channel. If you ever want to send us a question or just look at our social media accounts, you can go to Victory Pod USC. That's also where you can find schedule updates. And just so you know, speaking of the schedule, the next episode after this one will be the Nebraska preview that we record on Wednesday. So if you want to look out for questions, look out for a Monday or Tuesday tweet or question box on Instagram so you can put your questions in. Alrighty, Cody, let's start with USC's offense against Notre Dame. I thought for going on the road in a hostile environment, I thought the offense started pretty fast, which is what you want to do on the road.
Yeah, and that was one of the keys that we talked about on the preview episode going into this game is when you go on the road, if you get the ball first, you have to make it count. And USC did just that. That was my first note in this game. They go down 10 plays, 75 yards, finish in the end zone, take the crowd out of it, which was great to see. That's how you set the tone for a football game. Need to keep that up going forward. That needs to be the standard when we go play in these road games, when we go to Nebraska, when we go to Oregon, we have to start fast on offense. Now, unfortunately, that momentum was short-lived because right after that, Notre Dame goes 4 plays, 75 yards, and less than 1 minute, and they go score. But I can't put that against the offense. We'll talk about the defense in a minute and why that happened. But overall, I love the start from this football team on the offensive side of the ball. Coach Riley had a plan in place that opening drive. They absolutely nailed their first 15 plays, those scripted plays that you have going into that. And what a throw by Jaden Mayava to Lake McCree in the back of the end zone to set the tempo and set the tone for this football game.
Well, you mentioned him, Jaden Mayava. I know you like to evaluate quarterback play specifically first on this episode. What do you see from Jaden in South Bend?
Yeah, overall for Jaden Mayava, there were some good things that happened. There were also some bad things that happened and some throws that I'm sure that he would like to have back. But I'll start with the good. I thought he made some big-time throws in this game for being in that environment. That throw to Lake McCree we just talked about was a dime in the back of the end zone, and then that throw to Jacoby Lane, the second touchdown where he ran that post corner. It was almost like a V route where he's selling the over and then take the high corner over the top. Was a beautifully thrown ball by Jaden Mayava, put it in the bucket so he could run after the catch. And he showed good poise in this game. There were times that I was looking to him with the crowd noise on some of these third downs, if he was going to get rattled, how he was going to handle the pre-snap and post-snap and all the checks and everything at the line of scrimmage. I thought he was calm, cool, and collected. I know he had a couple turnovers and he had some accuracy issues in this game, but overall, I was proud of the way that he handled the environment. That gives you confidence going forward against Nebraska as well as against Oregon because I know that he can go out and compete and perform in that environment. It's not going to rattle him too much. Now, I briefly touched on it, but some of the negatives and things that he has to work on, he missed some throws in this game where we had some big opportunities, and accuracy has been a little asterisk throughout the year, even in some of the wins. I've talked about his feet being off a little bit. leaving some of these throws short, missing some high as well. That came back and got him a little bit in this game. We had a couple times where guys were open down the field and Maava underthrew him. It did draw a penalty, a couple PI calls on that, so I can't fully put it on him, but they were big plays to be made. And I know we can talk about, Jacoby Lane maybe dropping that one, and I don't mind the throw down there at the goal line because you have that safety that can hit him if you put it on the front hip or if you lead him too far. But that ball's just got to be a little bit more up. And those environments and those type of games, you have to be pinpoint. The margin for error is so small. Keely, you hear me say this all the time.
Yeah.
A little bit too low of a throw, now you don't finish in the end zone. A little bit too high of a throw, now you miss a touchdown. It just has to be perfect. And again, I'm nitpicking because I thought he did make some big time throws, but that was something that he's got to get better at. The other thing that he has to do, and something that I've talked about for the last couple of weeks, I want him to be more of a factor in the run game, especially with the injuries in the backfield to Wayman Jordan and Eli Sanders. I would like to see some design runs. I know he brought Hassan Longstreet in for that play to run the football. I'm okay with leading Jaden in and having some of those design runs. He can be a little bit better on some of his reads with those zone reads, with the end crashing down, whether to give it, to pull it and run, or to kick out the RPO. But the other area that I think he can improve in the run game is when the play breaks down, he gets off schedule, he gets outside of the pocket, there are plays to be made on the ground. I love that he keeps his eyes downfield and he tries to find, work the scramble drill and find a throw, down the field and pick up an explosive play. But sometimes it's okay to just take off, pick up 5 to 7 yards, slide and get down or get out of bounds. And there's times in this game where he could have done that. There were times against Michigan, Illinois that he could have done that. He's an athletic player. We saw it at UNLV. We've seen flashes of it here at USC. I just would like to see him be a little bit more of a factor in the run game, especially when he's scrambling. And then talking about one more thing that was bad, or two more things, was the 2 interceptions. The first one was great pocket awareness. He did a good job avoiding the rush, stepping up. He just got a little lazy with his footwork and his mechanics. Instead of getting his base to the target, and he left it inside. He had Jacoby Lane, who had a step on the basic route or the crossing route over the middle on Christian Gray, just left it inside, allowed the DB to make a play when he wasn't in position to make a play. So that was on Jaden Maava. And then the second interception, I know that he was trying to make a play there and it was kind of desperation mode at that point, but it's still third down. Just pick up half of that, take off and run. Another play where he could have probably tried to take off and run and use his legs, or just pick up 10 yards and then make it a more manageable fourth down instead of trying to forcing that throw at the end. But I can't knock him on that. I get that it was close to desperation mode. A big play had to happen. He was giving his guy an opportunity, but there were a lot of things that went wrong in this game for USC. There's a list of areas to blame in this game. I'm not putting Jaden Maava at the top. I know he's a quarterback. That record, the win-loss, it's going to go on his shoulders, but he did some things well in this game. He just didn't finish the way that he should have. And again, I'm a quarterback, so I'm going to be hard on him, but I have full confidence still in 14 going forward.
I want to take advantage of the fact that you've been in Jaden's shoes before, Cody. And in that sense, he was asked after the game, how much did the weather affect you? And he obviously didn't make any excuses, and he just said, I need to play better. But when you're talking about accuracy issues, and I know that's something that you've talked about all season, so we can't just say it's the weather, but how much does that impact a quarterback in trying to really get the ball in there when there's a slip on the ball?
Yeah, I'm right there with him. You never want to make excuses no matter what the elements are. As a quarterback, your job is to get the ball to your receiver with great timing, accuracy, and rhythm. But now that I'm not playing quarterback, I will say it for him, and I didn't play in this game. That is a factor. It is something that's difficult to handle, especially when you live in Southern California. You don't deal with a lot of those type of games. And it's good practice because now we're in the Big Ten, so we're going to see a lot of those type of games, especially late in the season.
Yeah.
But you can try to replicate that. And we talked about this on the preview episode, some of those wet ball drills where the coach will come over and spray the football with water. But it's a lot different in a controlled environment than it is playing in South Bend, Indiana in a rivalry game with everything going on. You got to make decisions like that, especially when it becomes a pass heavy game in the second half when you get behind and are trying to come back. But again, I know he's not going to make excuses. I'll say it for him. That is tough sometimes. And it's tough too. You'd rather almost have it downpour than have it not rain and then rain again, then not rain and go back and forth, because now you don't know which type of football you're going to get. When it's pouring, all right, I know it's going to be a wet ball the entire time. When it's not raining, okay, we can throw it a little bit more. The ball's dry, but then you might get a little rain on the football in the second half. And it's tough to handle those elements, but you can't make excuses. You still got to go out there and perform. And I thought for the most part in those conditions, he had some big time throws. He really did. And that's because of the arm talent that he has. He's a big athletic kid with a strong arm, but again, I don't want to blame it on the weather, but you could tell in the second half he was missing some throws that we weren't used to seeing him miss, and you could maybe assume that the weather was a factor in that.
No, that makes sense. I just wanted to see from your perspective, Cody, because you've actually been in that situation before.
Yeah.
And one other point I want to make quickly before we move on to the next topic. You mentioned Hassan Longstreet. He's now reached his 4-game redshirt limit, if you will. So if he plays again, that means his red shirt is burned. So just something to be aware of. I know that's something we
It's a
talked
good
about
note.
early
Yeah.
in the season. So just something to be aware of there. But you talked about the run game, Cody. I know we were all kind of mesmerized by the King Miller show against Michigan, but it's a different thing when you come in and a team can prepare for you. What did you see from USC's run game on the whole in that sense?
Yeah, I'm going to start with the offensive line, those 5 guys up front, as well as some of the tight ends. I thought they did a good job in pass protection. They were winning some of their one-on-ones. When you have a quarterback like Jade Mayava, you can get away with maybe giving up a play here or there because he can make you right and have great pocket awareness and move outside of the pocket. So I don't want to give them a huge knock in pass protection, but where I don't think they were at their best and they have to be better because of what we've seen recently was in run blocking. It just wasn't quite the dominant performance that we've been accustomed to seeing from that group. And that's going to happen sometimes. You're going to play some really good front sevens, and Notre Dame has a really good front seven. They're physical. We talked about in the preview episode, their linebackers like to play downhill. They're going to come downhill and force you to try to win at the line of scrimmage. If you can get through that first level, there's big plays to be made. But unfortunately, we just weren't getting through that first level. And then talking about King Miller, he did a good job for being in his first game as a full-time starter in that environment. I feel 100% confident with King Miller. I thought he did some things well. Brian Jackson came in and made a couple runs. But with that being said, and you kind of alluded to it, Keely, everyone was so excited for good reason for King Miller last week. And it was such a feel-good story and a great thing that happened in that Michigan game that we almost brushed over and overlooked the fact that we just lost Wayman Jordan and Eli Sanders. And that hurt us in this football game. We went from having one of the best running back rooms in all of college football to having one of the most inexperienced running back rooms in all of college football. And that was a type of game with the cold weather, with handling the elements, being on the road, the crowd noise, all of that. And it was a back and forth game early on. So it was a game that we could have still ran the football early until we had to throw it later on in the second half. But that was a game where you can grind it out with Wayman Jordan. Instead of getting 2 on some of those runs, Wayman Jordan will run through an arm tackle and get 7. Eli Sanders gives you an extra element on the outside. I thought we had better athletes on our offense than they did in their secondary. I would have loved to see Eli Sanders get on the edge with some of those swing routes and some of those screen plays that get him in space. We just didn't have that in this football game. Again, I'm fully confident in King Miller. I'm fully confident in Brian Jackson and any of the other guys that are going to have to step up in absence of Sanders and Jordan. But those 2 backs, 2 and 1, were definitely missing this game, and they could have been a difference maker or even a bigger factor in this game that maybe potentially could have changed the outcome.
In that sense, Cody, I felt like USC had to lean on its pass game a little bit more than they had previously in this season just because of the injuries you mentioned. What did you see from USC's pass game in that sense?
Yeah, like you mentioned, we only ran the ball for 68 yards, but we did throw it for 330 yards. There were some big plays that Mayava made with his receivers on the perimeter. But this was the first game where we saw a team really focus on taking Mekhi Lemon out of the game plan. Notre Dame defensive coordinator Chris Ash made it clear that he wanted someone else to beat us besides number 6. And I expect teams to do that more going forward. Now, although they focused on doing that, we're talking about maybe Mekhi not having a big game or a big impact. He still had 4 catches for 76 yards. That's still a pretty good game for a lot of receivers in college football. But what I wanted to see was who's going to step up, and we saw that right away. Tanuk Hines made some big-time catches on the opening drive. He really got off to a hot start that allowed USC to go down and score on that first drive of the game. Maybe a PI call here or there that could have kept the momentum going. And I don't want to be too nitpicky with the rest, but he had another opportunity for a big play. It was close. It looked like a PI from home from watching it on TV, but either way, he made some big time catches. That gives you confidence going forward. But Jacoby Lane reminded people too that, hey, I'm still here. I know everyone's focusing on Mekhi. I had an injury. I'm coming back from that. I'm not quite 100%, but I'm still here and I can step up when my name's called upon. 6 catches, 111 yards and a touchdown. He did have a couple crucial drops, though, that he has to work on, and I promise he'd be the first to tell you, I've got to be better. That's on me. But he did make some big-time plays and made up for it in this game that helped USC, stay competitive and even took the lead on that deep touchdown pass. That was a great route, a great throw, and put USC in front, which was very short-lived again because of the ensuing kickoff return. But either way, it was good to see, Lake McCree had that touchdown catch. Tight ends weren't as involved, but it was good to see that Tanuk Hines, Jacoby Lane, when we have our running backs out, when they focus on Mekhi Lemon, that those guys can step up and still provide that spark on the perimeter for USC's passing game.
Well, given that we are talking about the next 5 games in this episode, Cody, I want to ask it here. You talk about defensive coordinators, or at least Chris Ash, taking away Mekhi Lemon. Obviously, that will be a blueprint that other defensive coordinators want to follow going forward. How, if you're USC's offense, do you combat that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And when we say taking away, obviously he made some big plays, but let me elaborate on that a little bit. There were multiple times in this game where they're playing cloud coverage to Makai's side, meaning a player underneath, a player over the top. They want to take him out of the game plan. Go back and watch that touchdown to Jacoby Lane. There are 2 defenders. They're playing cover 1 man, and they have 2 guys that are on Mekhi Lemon at the line of scrimmage saying, well, you are not catching a pass. So when I say take him away, I mean that the defense is putting more focus on him, putting an extra defender on him, putting their cloud coverage or an extra safety to his side of the football. But how do you beat that? How do you still have an explosive offense in the pass game? You do what we saw on Saturday night. You get Jacoby Lane going. You get Tanuk Hines going. You let these other guys step up. We need to have more production from the tight end room. That was one of the first games that Walker Lyons didn't have an opportunity to make some big-time plays. I know Lake McCree had the touchdown, but after that, he was pretty quiet in this game. You've got to let the other guys be involved so that the defensive coordinators say, okay, we're not going to let you beat us with 6, but you can also beat us with these other guys. So I can't just focus on him. I've got to help out elsewhere as well, or else it's going to be a long night. And USC has the athletes and the playmakers on the outside to do that. You just have to force the defensive coordinators out of those double coverage and get the ball to other players on the field.
You know, Cody, after last season and even in this season, Coach Riley has stressed the importance of finishing on the road. What did you see from USC's offense in that sense?
Yeah, that was a major factor in this football game, and that's something that USC has struggled with the last couple of years. And Coach Riley has reiterated, being better at finishing these games, especially on the road and especially against a very good opponent like Notre Dame is. You can't give them extra opportunities, and when you have a chance to put the game away, you have to. And USC gave themselves a great opportunity in the second half when they hit Jacoby Lane for that deep touchdown pass. They go up 24-21 with 4 minutes left to go in the third quarter. You've taken the crowd out of it. You've got momentum on your side. You fought your tails off to get back in this football game and take the lead, and then it was very short-lived. The very next kickoff return, Notre Dame takes it to the house, gets the crowd right back involved. And I'm not putting that on the offense. I'm not putting it on the defense. We mentioned special teams at the top of this segment. As good as Ryan Sayeri has been, as good as they've been as a unit, this was the worst time to have a lapse on your kickoff return. And guys were in position. They just had to make the tackle, and then you gave them a little bit of space, and Notre Dame capitalized on that. It's tough to go from highs to lows so quickly, and football's about weathering those emotions. But I promise, after you score and you're feeling good about yourself, they go back and score right away. It is up and down, and you've got to be able to stay in the moment. It's just tough to do that. But with that being said, Notre Dame missed that following extra point after they scored. And it was only 27-24 at that moment, and USC was still in this game. They weren't out of it. They had a chance, especially on offense, to go back and take the lead, but those last 4 drives that they had were not good enough. You've got to be better in those moments. The first one was the interception we already talked about. Jade Mayava threw it behind Jacoby Lane. The next drive, they have a fumble, and I'll address that quickly here because Coach Riley said it the way that he did after the game. They asked him about it, calling the reverse to Mekhi Lemon, having him throw it, and those weather conditions in that moment, he said it was a stupid call. And I'm going to leave it at that because that's from his own mouth. I'm glad that he addressed that. I'm glad that he came out and said, hey, I've got to be better in that moment. And I'm sure he will be. I'm sure he'll watch that and going forward, be in that moment again at some point and say, hey, I'm going to be better in this situation. I have full faith in Lincoln Riley. This is one of, if not the most explosive offenses in the entire country. They're putting up big-time numbers. They're doing it against good opponents. It's just the little minor details like that can make or break a football game. But again, I have full faith that Lincoln will be better in that situation going forward because I've seen him be better in those situations. And then the next 2 drives, we go turnover on downs. Again, 4th and inches. You can argue maybe quarterback sneak it, do a handoff. I'm sure they saw something that they liked in that play calling or something they liked on film to sell the run fake and then sneak Lake McCree out to the flat. If he hits it, we're feeling great. If he doesn't, again, we're questioning the play call. So that's a hindsight situation. But again, I don't mind sneaking it there. I don't mind running the football, but we've seen him hit those flat plays to Lake McCree. We've seen him hit on some of those 4th and short situations to where you catch the defense off guard. So it's tough to say, hey, do this, do that when you're not in that moment, after the fact. But either way, again, 2 plays that we should have capitalized on. And then the last drive was an interception. Jade Mayava, again, trying to win the game. We're in desperation mode there. I wouldn't have minded picking up some yards on 3rd down and then giving yourself a chance on 4th down, but I don't hate the fact that he was trying to give the guys an opportunity there to get back in this football game. But overall, on the offensive side of the ball, You give yourself a chance to win the game. You put yourself in a great position. And then the last 4 drives, you go interception, fumble, turnover on downs, and then interception again. It's tough to win football games like that, especially against a very good Notre Dame football team. But that's something that this team's going to have to get better at. And they're going to learn going into this bye week, fix some of these issues, work on 4th down situations, work on end of the game scenarios so that when you're in that position again going forward, you can make the right plays and you can, come out on top and get a win.
Alrighty, Cody. Any other thoughts on USC's offensive performance against Notre Dame before we switch over to the defense?
No, I don't, but I do have a side note for everyone. If you're hearing some screaming noises in the background, I promise everything's okay at the Kessler household. It's just that my son, Brooks, who is now 10 months old, discovered that he can scream recently. So anybody that's had a newborn, they have babies. As soon as they start learning their voice, they love to do it over and over and over again. It's awesome. It's really cool to see. It's a proud dad moment. It's just not the most exciting when you're trying to film a podcast episode or when it's the middle of the night and he wakes up at 3 a.m. and he starts screaming at the top of his lungs. And I'm in my office. He's on the other side of the house and you can still hear him because he's very loud. But yeah, it's Brooks in the background, I promise. Also, on top of that, it's been really cool too because he's saying dad now and we're getting close to mama. And he's starting to, he's talking, but he's not saying words yet really besides dad and baba is the other thing he's saying. Yeah, there you go. But it's been super cool. But again, I apologize. Bear with us. If you hear some screams throughout the rest of this episode, my son Brooks is having a great time in the other room.
We've come so far, Cody, because we were on a baby watch and then we were on a newborn crying watch. And now we're on Brooks is screaming at 10 months old watch. So we're going a full circle of life here.
He's growing up with the rest of us right now. You don't get to see him, but you can hear him in real time growing up. And obviously I'm a proud dad, so I'm definitely going to talk about him every chance I get.
Alrighty, Cody, I want to move us over to the defense. Before you just want to give a thanks to Audi. What you expect from an SUV is a range of sizes to fit your lifestyle. Expectations matter, but exceeding them matters more. The Audi family of SUVs, progress you can feel. Alrighty, Cody, as promised, the defensive performance. I want to start with pass defense. What did you see there?
Yeah, I thought we did a better job this game on the perimeter. I thought DeCarlos Nicholson played well. We didn't give up big-time plays over the top. We wanted to keep everything in front of us, and that was the point of emphasis for D'Anton Lynn. But let's protect our guys on the outside. Let's force them to take the underneath routes. Let's eliminate those explosive plays. CJ Carr never really got comfortable in this game. I know he had a touchdown pass, but you could just tell that he was off. The weather, that environment, that the moment just got a little bit too much for him at times, and he made some bad decisions, especially down there in the red zone. But I don't want to just put it on CJ Carr because USC's defense deserves credit for that as well. They forced him into those bad decisions because they were covering well. The pass rush was getting after him. They made him scramble around, and then he tried to force a throw, and Braylon Shelby made a great play on the football and got an interception. Like I mentioned, Nicholson did a good job on Malachi Fields. Their 6'4", 220-pound receiver. That was a matchup that we talked about in the preview episode. Keep an eye on that. I expect Nicholson to follow him around in that game with his size. He did a good job for most of the night. Will Pauling, who was another big playmaker on the perimeter for them, only had 2 catches. I know one of them was a touchdown on Bishop Fitzgerald, but that was a great throw by CJ Carr. It was a cover 0 type look down there at the goal line. That's a tough spot for Bishop to be in. He made a great play on the football, but he just couldn't get there in time. Again, ball placement. It's tough to defend a perfectly thrown ball, and CJ Carr put it in the great spot for Pauling to make a play on it. And then the other guy that USC needed to focus on Notre Dame's passing attack was wide receiver Jordan Faison. I thought they did a good job for most of the night on him as well. Had some of those stop routes, some of those underneath routes, but he only had 6 catches for 60 yards. And then the last guy that we were focused on, and I mentioned, was how's USC going to do against a true pass-catching tight end, and Eli Reardon. USC did a good job. He didn't make a lot of big plays in this game. They did a good job of having a plan for him. So overall, I thought, and I know the elements played a factor into it. You have a freshman quarterback, but I thought we did a good job for most of the night, forcing CJ Carr to be uncomfortable and not giving up explosive plays in the pass game.
Well, sticking on the topic of positives, I thought USC also did well on 3rd down. What do you see there?
Yeah, that was another positive. And that's something, I know after a loss, you don't want to hear all the positives, but that's something that we got to talk about. Notre Dame was 3 of 11 on 3rd down. As bad as USC was against the run, and that's what we'll obviously finish with in a second, they did a good job of still giving our offense a chance to win this game. They did a good job of getting off the field on 3rd down situations, not allowing them to extend drives, and giving our offense, even with everything that happened and the yards they gave up, still gave them a chance to win this football game at the end. We just couldn't get it done on both sides of the ball. But Notre Dame was 3 of 11 on 3rd down. I don't care who you're playing. I don't care if it's home, if it's away, what the elements are like. That is winning football, and that's something that D'Anton Lynn has been so good with this season. And since really he's been a defensive coordinator, is getting off the field on 3rd down. USC had a plan in place on those 3rd down situations, and the players went out there and executed.
Well, you just alluded to it, Cody, but Coach Riley said that USC's run defense has to be better. What did you see in that regard?
Yeah, that was the biggest story in this football game. What was USC's run defense was unacceptable. That they have to be better. You know, going into this game that you're facing one of, if not the best running backs in college football, and Jeremiah Love. You're facing one of the best backfields when you add Jadarian Price into the mix as well. It had to be a point of emphasis to stop the run. We could not let Jeremiah Love beat us in this football game, and we did the exact opposite. Notre Dame had 300 yards rushing in this game. They averaged 7 yards per carry as a team. Jeremiah Love, who was my red dot player of the week, that's Keely. That's the definition of a guy that can change a game. If you don't account for him and you don't take him out of the game plan, he is a difference maker. And that's exactly what he did in this football game. He had 24 carries, 228 yards rushing, and 1 touchdown. He averaged 9.5 yards per carry. I know he had that big run at the beginning of the game that maybe changed that number a little bit more, made it look bigger than what it was, but he was having explosive run after explosive run. He did it off the left side, the right side. He did it in between the tackles. They got him out in the perimeter. Jeremiah Love was running at will against this USC front seven. And then when he wasn't doing it, his backup, Jadarian Price, was doing it. He had 13 carries, 87 yards, and a touchdown. He also averaged 6.7 yards per carry. It is almost impossible to win football games when you're giving up 300 yards rushing to an opponent, especially a team like Notre Dame on the road. That just can't happen. That has to get corrected going forward. When you go back and watch the film, it just felt like Notre Dame was doing whatever they wanted to in the run game with USC's front seven, and there were too many times that they were out of position. There was not great gap integrity. They were getting moved out of their gap too easily, that they had multiple guys in the same gap. That first run to Jeremiah Love, where he broke it open on the opening drive, we had almost 6 or 7 guys on the right side of the line and no one in the backside B or C gap. It was just too easy for them to hit that on the opening play. And that's when you start the game to where you have your plan in place. Okay, this is how we're going to start. We know what they're going to do on offense. We know how to go out and execute. That shouldn't happen that early on in the game. Maybe if you give up a play when guys are tired later on and you have an explosive run like that, but on the opening drive to be undisciplined and out of your gap and give up an easy run like that, that just can't happen against a team that you know wants to run the football. There were too many times on film where guys were not doing their job and trying to do someone else's job. And I talk about it all the time, especially on defense. If you have 10 guys doing the right thing and one guy isn't, that's where you have explosive plays. That leads to touchdowns. That leads to 60-yard runs. And there were too many times on films that you could see that. And what I mean by doing your job when it comes to run defense and gap integrity is that if you are that one technique, you're the 3 technique as a defensive tackle, and your responsibility is the A gap, which is between the center and the right guard. If your responsibility is that A gap, you stay in that A gap. You do not let them run through the A gap instead of trying to maybe chase the runner to the B gap or go outside. You trust that your buddy's going to be there. If I stop the A gap, I know that backside defensive tackle is going to be in the opposite A gap. I know that linebacker or the safety is going to be in the C gap, and we're going to have great outside contain. But if you start trying to do someone else's job and you let go of your gap, then guys like Love, guys like Price are going to make you pay for it. And that happened all game long in this football game. We've got to be more disciplined. We've got to be better up front. We were getting moved out of our spot too many times. It just wasn't great football. And, that starts with Dan Lynn. It also starts with the players on the field. You can't put the blame in any one place. I know Lynn, the type of coach he is and the leader he is going to take full responsibility, but the players in that locker room are equally at fault for this. And I know they're going to step up and say, hey, we've got to be better. And Eric Gentry and guys like that have already stepped up and said, hey, we're going to get this fixed. And I truly believe that they will. But when you go back and watch this film, watch it one time, learn from it, turn the page, put it behind you. But what happened on Saturday cannot happen again going forward. We've got to be better and both stopping the pass. I thought we did a good job with our secondary, but we have to be better at stopping the run in this football game because it was unacceptable all game long.
Alrighty, Cody, as we mentioned, I want to look at the next 5 games for USC in the regular season. Before we do, just want to give thanks to Ralph's. At Ralph's, you get high quality and low prices, so you never have to compromise your budget. Save on thousands of items throughout the store. Ralph's, fresh for everyone. Now, looking at these next 5 games, Cody, obviously, the first one is just the next game ahead of USC. It's another road game, a conference opponent at Nebraska. What are you seeing there?
Yeah, I want to take a look at these last 5 games, like you mentioned, Keely, starting at Nebraska. That this is going to be a big challenge for this football team. I know everyone wants to circle that game in Eugene. at Oregon as the biggest game in these last five. But to me, that is Nebraska. That's the game that needs to be highlighted because I want to see how this team responds. Can they do it again? They obviously lost to Illinois, had a bye, responded great against Michigan. Now you lose against Notre Dame, have another bye. How can you bounce back? It's tough to do that twice, but that's going to come down to the leadership on this football team and the culture and foundation that's in place in that locker room. So this is a big test for USC. It's going to really set the tone for these last four games after that. The game after is Northwestern at home. That is a Friday night game. It's a short week. Everything changes a little bit with your schedule. You cannot take this team lightly. They beat Penn State. I know Penn State struggled this year, but they have a lot of really good players on that roster still. So we have to come out on a short week and play well against Northwestern. The next game is going to be a huge test for this defense. Iowa at home. This is a team that we've seen year in and year out that they take pride in dominating in the run game. They're averaging almost 200 yards per game right now, rushing, which is fifth in the Big Ten. They are going to wear you out by running the football. We have to be great in our run defense, and our front seven has to learn from this last game and go out and dominate in the trenches. Then the next game, the one everyone wants to talk about, and rightfully so. I know I said Nebraska is a game I got highlighted. Oregon's right after that. It's going to be at Oregon. This is a big one. This is a very tough stadium to play at. If we win this first three, I expect this game to have major implications on the Big Ten race. It's going to have major implications on the college football playoff. We have to show up and we have to compete. This is a prove-it game for USC. We talk about who's that premier team on the West Coast right now. USC and Oregon are two teams that are at the top of that list. We've got to go out there and dominate on the road. This would be a statement win for USC football, and I like our chances. I think we have an opportunity to go out and match up well with this Oregon football team, especially with our high-powered offense, but this is going to be a great one to watch. And then the last game of the year against USC's rival, UCLA, at the Coliseum for the Victory Bell. This is a game, Keely, 3 weeks ago, we probably wouldn't even be talking about. We wouldn't even mention it. We just put a W next to it in the win column and move on. But this is a completely different UCLA football team these last 3 weeks. Jerry Neuheisel has got the offense rolling. After they fired Deshaun Foster, this team is kind of taken on an us against the world type of attitude. And that's when a team gets dangerous. So it's still the Bruins. I'm not going to give them too much credit. I believe Cardinal and Gold. I believe USC is going to handle business in that game and dominate, but we cannot take them lightly. This isn't the same team that we saw in the first half of the season. They've been playing some good football lately, and we've got to take them serious.
Well, on the whole, Cody, I know I usually ask you keys to the game, but I'm going to ask you keys to the season, if you will. What do you need to see? What do you need to see from USC going forward in order to accomplish all that you just previewed?
Yeah, I'm going to start on the offensive side of the ball. Regardless of how we finish that game against Notre Dame, this is still one of, if not the most explosive offenses in the entire country. Our guys on the perimeter are playing some really good football, and Jacoby Lane, Mekhi Lemon, our tight ends have been stepping up. I know we have some injuries in the running back room, but I still have full faith in King Miller. Would hope to get Wayman Jordan hopefully back at some point. I don't know what his injury timetable looks like, but if we can get him back, that'd be great. But you also have Brian Jackson in there. And I think if we give him some more opportunities, he can make some big time plays. But the guy that I have full faith in right now is who's leading this team at quarterback. Jade Mayava is still playing as good as anyone in the country right now. I know that game wasn't his best, but I still know that if 14's out there on the field at quarterback, USC has a chance to win any football game that they play in. So I believe that he's going to get back on track with this offense, and they're going to play well against Nebraska. And then on the defensive side of the ball, I just want to see them be more consistent. It's been a boom or bust type of defense the last couple of weeks. They struggle against Illinois, struggle in the run game, struggle stopping the pass. Then against Michigan, they bounce back and play great in that game. They stop the run. They put pressure on Bryce Underwood. They got some takeaways on the defensive side of the ball. And then they come back against Notre Dame and they struggled again. And we talked about all that at the beginning of this episode. I won't go back over it, but I want to see some better play from that front seven, from the defensive line, from the linebackers. They've got to play better as a unit. Do your job. You're going to hear me say that probably throughout the rest of the year. Right now, it's not good enough. And then the secondary needs to continue to get better. Nicholson, Marcellus Williams, they got to keep stepping up. They're going to play some more man-to-man. We're going to play some teams that want to run the football, so they've got to be physical in the trenches and have our corners on an island. But then when we play these teams that throw it, like Nebraska, like Oregon, we've got to be great on our coverage on the outside. And then my final note for this football team, despite losing against Notre Dame, USC is still alive in the Big Ten race. They could potentially still be alive in the college football playoff. I know I mentioned it's the cliche saying after a loss where everything's still ahead of you or everything's still in front of you, but that is 100% true for this football team. But if I'm in that locker room, none of that matters. You block that out. Take it 1 week at a time. You grow from the good. You learn from the bad. You continue to improve week in and week out. You hit this bye week hard. You focus on correcting some of your mistakes. You get better as a football team. The leadership really needs to step up, both on the field and in the locker room and in those meeting rooms. If you're a guy that's injured right now and you're close to getting back, make sure you're rehabbing. You're doing everything the right way. You have to be perfect going forward if you want an opportunity to play in the college football playoff, to have a chance at a Big Ten championship. But again, 1 week at a time. Next week is Nebraska. Focus on that game. Nameless, faceless opponent. If you go out and handle business, if you control what you can control, you're going to look up at the end of the season and be proud of the product that you put on the field and give yourself the best opportunity to be where you want to be at the end of the year.
Well, Cody, I want to ask you final thoughts, but you just gave us a Coach Cody outro. That was great. Anything else, Cody, before we wrap this one up?
No, I'm good. I mean, I want to see a mad football team. I want to see a football team that wants it, that's determined, that's not accepting these losses, that doesn't have what happened last year to where they lose a couple and then it starts going downhill. I want to see a team like we saw after that first loss, because I know they can do it. I know they have the coaching staff and the leadership capable of it. But after they lose this game, to get back on track and go run the table these last five, and like I said, be where they want to be at the end of the year. Let everything else happen how it will. Other teams are going to lose. They're going to win. You can't control how other teams play. You just control how you can play. But if you're a fan watching this, keep riding with this football team. They need your support. I promise you, as a player on the field, they don't want to lose more than anyone else in the entire world right now. But when it happens, it's important to still have the support of the fans. Everyone keep fighting on. That's our motto, and we're going to keep living by that. Love you guys. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Again, sorry for not being here Sunday, but now you kind of get a 2-for-1, and then we will see you guys next Wednesday for the preview of Nebraska. Get ready for that one too, Keely. I can't wait to hear. I know you're going to it in person. I am so curious to hear how that atmosphere is going to be. If you don't know, they sell out pretty much every single home game for the last however many years.
They have like a 30-year sold out streak or something like that.
I'm excited.
Cold too.
Is it?
I didn't realize that it gets like cold there. Yeah.
Hopefully
I'm
there's
peeking ahead, but it's like a high of 50.
Hey, no, as long as there's no lightning or rain or weather delays, I don't bring on the cold. We'll be fine. But either way, yeah, we're going to learn a lot about this football team in that environment, but I can't wait. So make sure you guys stick with us. Keep watching these episodes. We hopefully you guys enjoy the content. Fight on. Love you guys. I'm going to go get my son who's been screaming. So we are done.
Yeah, that's going to wrap it up. Like Cody said, thank you for your patience on this one. Just better overall schedule-wise for us to record on Wednesday. So appreciate the patience on that front. But like Cody said, we'll be back for the Nebraska preview. Excited to cover that one. But that's going to wrap it up for this week's episode. That's Cody. I'm Keely. We'll see y'all next time.